Tupac's murder has been unsolved for decades, but there have been some shocking new developments. Keefe D has already admitted to being in the car with the dude who murdered Pac, and now the cops raided his house to collect a bunch of new evidence. It's a story that could blow up the entire industry, and today we're breaking it all down. After Tupac died, all kinds of crazy rumors started flying about who was behind the hit. Some people claim Suge Knight had him taken out because Pac wanted to leave death row. Others say Puffy wanted to kill him and win the war between the East and West Coast. And a lot of people even think the government was involved. For over 20 years, there wasn't much evidence to go off of. But last week was the first major development in the case for decades. News broke that police had raided 2 houses in connection to Pac's murder, and a dude named Keefe D had ties to both of them. In the home where his wife Paula Clemens lives in Vegas, they served a search warrant and gathered a large number of bullets from the crib. They also raided another house Keefe owns and brought out hard drives, CDs, thumb drives, an iPhone, laptop, 2 iPads, and other evidence. Nobody knows what kind of info the cops have on Keefe D that made him start executing search warrants over 20 years after Pac's death, but it's clear that they had a good reason to investigate him. But before we break down all of the evidence, here's what you need to know about why Keefe would want Pac dead. A few hours before Pac was shot and killed, he went to a Mike Tyson fight at the MGM Grand with Suge Knight and a bunch of other death row dudes. While they were in the lobby, someone in the crew spotted a Southside Crip named Orlando Anderson and pointed him out to Pac. According to rumors, Anderson had snatched a death row chain from one of their affiliates before, and that's why Pac walked up to him and threw the first punch. All the death row dudes jumped Anderson, but they had to run out after hotel security jumped in to break it up. Pac went back to his hotel, then hopped in a whip with Suge to go to a spot that Suge owned called Club 662. But what they didn't know is that Anderson and his homies were allegedly already out on the streets hunting them. Anderson ended up getting killed a couple years later in a gang shooting, and 2 other dudes who were with him that night died before they could be investigated fully. But the last man alive is Keefe D. Keefe D is a Southside Compton Crip who was tied with Eazy-E back in the day. He was allegedly one of the most powerful dudes in the set, and he's also Orlando Anderson's uncle. There have been rumors about Keefe being involved ever since the shooting went down, and a few years ago, audio from Keefe's confession leaked to the public. Keefe was facing 25 to life on drug charges, but instead of taking it to trial, he took a plea deal and agreed to tell the cops everything about the night Pac was killed. And this is how it all went down according to him. After Orlando got jumped by Pac and the death row dudes, he met up with Keefe and the rest of the crew to figure out the next move. According to Keefe, an affiliate of Puffy named Zip told them he had some straps stashed in his whip that they could have, and that's where they got the 40 Glock that was used to kill Pac. They would have probably gone after Pac anyways for putting hands on Anderson, but Keefe says that Puff already had $1 million on his head and they had the perfect opportunity to collect it that night. Keefe told the cops that Puffy originally just wanted them to take out Suge, but that changed after Pac dropped the track Hit 'Em Up. Hit 'Em Up is one of the most savage diss tracks in rap history, and Pac called Puffy out by name when he raps, "We bust on bad boys, niggas fucked for life. Plus, Puffy trying to see me, weak hearts I rip, Biggie Smalls and Junior Mafia some mark-ass bitches." The track was cold enough that it made Puffy want to kill Pac, and Keefe says this is how it happened. At first, it was 2 vehicles full of Southside Crips, a van and a white Cadillac. They went to Club 662 to wait for Suge and Pac, but after half an hour, they still hadn't shown up. Keefe was in the van at first, but the dudes in there were getting nervous about the situation, so he hopped in the caddy with Orlando and the other dudes. They decided to hit the strip and start looking, and that's when they saw some girls yelling at Pac from another car. Keefe and the rest of the Crips hit a U-turn and pulled up behind Suge and Pac, and Keefe passed the Glock to the back seat. Keefe was sitting in the passenger seat, so he didn't have a good shot when they pulled up on the right side of Suge's car. Orlando was sitting behind Keefe, so they tried to give the gun to a dude named Dre who was behind the driver. Dre didn't want to take the shot though, so Orlando grabbed the strap, reached across Dre, and started letting off shots. Keefe and Suge had both came up in Compton and had known each other since they were 7 or 8 years old, and that night they made eye contact right before a bullet hit Suge in the head. Keefe thought he was dead at first. Back then, nobody knew about Keefe's side of the story except the police, but a few years ago, Keefe revealed that he had cancer and wanted to let everyone know what happened. He wrote a book and talks about how the shooting went down, and he told DJ Vlad that when they first rode up on Suge's car, it looked like Pac was reaching for a strap. What a lot of people don't realize is that the death row dudes clapped back at Keefe and the rest of the Crips. Reggie Wright Jr. was the head of security at death row, and he told Vlad one of Suge's right-hand dudes chased him down and started letting off shots. Keefe told Vlad that a few days later they met up with Zip in LA, and Puffy called to ask, was that us? Zip was supposed to bring the $1 million that Puffy allegedly put on Suge and Pac's heads, but Keefe and the crew never got the money. He says that the FBI told him Zip took the money for himself and opened a nightclub. Keefe got off easy when he decided to work with the cops. He was looking at spending the rest of his life in prison on drug charges, but all that went away when he told him about the Pac murder. But here's the issue. If anything he said in that interview turns out to be fake, he can still be taken to trial over Pac's shooting. Last year, Reggie Wright Jr. told Bomb First that there had been a lot of activity in the case recently, and he said Keefe D has probably been having the runs the last 2 weeks because the cops were on his trail. Keefe clapped back in an interview with The Art of Dialogue and said that Reggie is just obsessed with him. And in the same interview, Keefe said that if he gets arrested that they should grab Reggie too, because Keefe thinks he was involved with Biggie getting killed in LA. Biggie was killed just a few months after Pac, and most people involved with the investigation think Suge was behind the hit. He allegedly hired a mob power named Poochie to kill Biggie and get back at Bad Boy Records for taking out Pac. There's no evidence that ties Reggie Wright Jr. to the shooting though, but obviously that could change. If Keefe told the truth about Orlando being the shooter and how everything went down that night, then he shouldn't have anything to worry about. But in one of his interviews with DJ Vlad brought up a witness statement that could help put Keefe behind bars for life. A witness who was there that night said they saw an arm coming out of the whip and letting off shots. Orlando Anderson was a small, skinny dude, but the witness said that the arm hanging out of the window was big. Keefe got defensive immediately and said he was in the passenger seat of the whip.
What witnesses were saying though was that when they saw the arm stick out the window and do the shooting, it wasn't a skinny arm. It was a bulky, hefty looking arm.
Well, I was in the passenger seat.
Vlad said he wasn't accusing him, but you can see how uncomfortable Keefe was when the statement got brought up. He said that the witness was lying.
I'm not saying it's you. I'm saying that there's 4 people in the car, but they said it wasn't a skinny arm that stuck his hand out the window.
Who the witness?
Can't say.
Okay, they lying.
But now it looks like there's more to the story. If Orlando wasn't the shooter, then that means Keefe D could have been. And if he's the one who actually pulled the trigger on Pac, his deal with the police will be thrown out the window and the case could end up going to trial. Nobody knows what the cops were really looking for when they went to collect evidence at his house, but they don't just have search warrants for anything. They have to prove there's probable cause before a judge will let them raid a house, so obviously there's more going on behind the scenes right now. It's been decades since Pac was killed and the game lost a legend, but we might finally be getting closer to the truth about what happened that night. And if this case gets blown wide open, there's a good chance that more evidence will come out about Biggie's death too.